You know what's dangerous about workplace bullies? Most people think bullying only looks like yelling and screaming. But in high performing teams, bullying is usually much quieter than that. It's the eye rolling in the meeting or the sarcasm disguised as, I'm just joking, or the constant interrupting, or the public correction, or, the silent treatment, or that leader who makes people feel small and then calls it high standards or raising the bar. And here's the problem with that. When bullying goes unchecked in a team, talent stops talking. And when talent stops talking, innovation dies. Trust goes out the window. And your best people, they start resigning long before they physically leave the building. And that's why in the Team Whisperer, I teach this: silence kills teams more than conflict ever will. Because healthy conflict sharpens a team, but intimidation, it suffocates one. Now, let me give you a real world example. You remember at Google during the research project known as Project Aristotle, they studied hundreds of teams trying to figure out what made the best teams perform at elite levels. And do you know what they discovered? No, it wasn't IQ. It wasn't seniority. It wasn't even experience. The number one predictor of high performing teams was, you guessed it, psychological safety. In other words, can people speak up without being humiliated? Can they challenge ideas without retaliation? Can they admit mistakes without fear? Because the moment people fear embarrassment more than failure, your culture starts shrinking. And bullies thrive in shrinking cultures. Now, here's where emotional intelligence changes everything. Mr. Bradbury teaches this, that emotional intelligent leaders have self-awareness and self-management. Here's a translation. Just because you feel disrespected doesn't mean you get the right to become destructive. Emotionally intelligent leaders pause before reacting. They regulate before responding. They correct behavior without crushing one's dignity. That's leadership maturity. And standing up to a bully does not mean becoming one. That's where a lot of leaders fail. They think confrontation means aggression. No. Healthy confrontation sounds like this: help me understand why you felt the need to address your teammate that way in front of the entire team. You see that? Calm, direct, non-defensive, clear boundaries. That's emotional intelligence under pressure. Because bullies are often expecting emotional chaos. What disrupts them is composed accountability. Let me give you another case study. At Microsoft, when Nadella took over, one of the biggest problems inside the culture was internal competition and toxic behavior between divisions. People were protecting territory instead of collaborating. Brilliant people, broken culture. And Nadella shifted the organization from know-it-all culture to a learn-it-all culture. Now that's emotional intelligence at scale. He rewarded curiosity over arrogance, collaboration over ego, coaching over intimidation. And the results, the culture transformed, and so did performance. Because you cannot build high performing teams on fear for long. Fear may create compliance temporarily, but trust creates commitment sustainably. Now let's get very practical here, folks. If you're leading in a toxic environment, here's what standing up to workplace bullying actually looks like. First, you address behavior early. Bullies grow in tolerated ambiguity. The longer leaders ignore it, the more permission the culture feels it. Second, you correct privately when possible, publicly when necessary. Protect dignity, but defend culture. Third, you create what I call permission candor. The team must know we can disagree here without destroying each other, and especially each other's dignity. That's the art of beautiful arguments. Fourth, you document patterns, not emotions. Emotionally intelligent leaders don't say they're toxic. They say, over the last 4 meetings, there were repeated interruptions, dismissive comments, and public corrections that shut down collaborations. You see, facts lower defensiveness. And finally, you model courage. When the team is always watching what the leader tolerates, and hear me carefully with this, every unaddressed bully silently trains your healthy employees to disengage. So when leaders tell me my team just isn't speaking up anymore, I often ask who taught them it wasn't safe. Some of you watching this right now, you're not dealing with a performance issue, you're dealing with an emotional safety issue. And until people feel safe enough to contribute, your team will never fully perform. That's why leadership is not about controlling people, it's about creating environments where people can thrive without fear. And when you learn to combine emotional intelligence with courageous leadership, you'll stop building teams that survive under pressure. They start building teams that grow stronger because of it. If this resonates with you, that's exactly why I created the Team Whisperer Toolkit in my leadership workshops. Because high performing teams don't happen accidentally, they're built intentionally.